Welcome back to Inside City Hall. My next guest served as the governor of New Mexico for 2 terms until 2003 and had been running for president as a Republican. That was until last December when he switched to the Libertarian Party line. The question is, will his campaign hurt the GOP more than President Obama when November rolls around? Joining us to discuss his candidacy is Libertarian candidate for president Gary Johnson. Thanks for being with us. Good to see you.
Great to be on. Great to be here in New York and visit.
Let me ask a sort of a process question.
Sure.
You complained somewhat bitterly that the Republicans weren't giving you access to all of the various debates that they were having, and that was based on them, the party or the hosts of these debates saying that you weren't polling high enough and you basically hadn't raised enough money.
Actually, the issue was that I wasn't polling in polls where my name wasn't even in the polls.
Oh, yeah.
That was the issue.
Hard to be considered if they don't have...
Hard to be considered if you're not in the polls. And then when I was in the polls, I was polling the same or better than those that were on stage. So it was very unfair, just no matter how you cut it.
Was this the decision of news organizations, or was this the party hierarchy itself?
Well, CNN, for example, 5 months ago, they do a national poll every 2 weeks, and they had me at 2% of the national vote. Well, at that time, that tied me with Cain and put me ahead of Santorum and put me ahead of Huntsman. I thought, well, we're done with this finally. Finally, we're at an end to this controversy. After that poll, they excluded me from every single poll they've done since then. Interesting. And of course, no response from CNN on why they would do that.
Okay, so you made the decision that it would be better to pursue a candidacy outside of the Republican Party.
Well, I think that what I have to say is a message that really does resonate with most Americans. I believe that. And it is about the message, and it is about changing the world a little bit. So this is the real opportunity here, is to be able to continue to talk about this agenda, libertarian agenda, the Libertarian nominee. I am running for the nomination, but the Libertarian nominee will be on the ballot in all 50 states, which is really significant. So it gives that opportunity. Potentially polling at a level 15% high enough to be on the national debate stage in the general election.
In a nugget, what is the Gary Johnson Libertarian agenda?
Well, really with a broad brush, the notion that all of us are fiscally conservative, or that the majority of Americans feel themselves fiscally conservative and socially liberal. So the notion that we really do want a balanced budget, that unless we balance this budget, unless we get the budget under control, we're going to find ourselves in the midst of a monetary collapse and find ourselves with nothing. And then the notion that government should stay out of the bedroom. When you talk about legalizing marijuana, when you talk about gay marriage equality, a woman's right to choose, anti-war, these are the positions that I think also most Americans hold.
Let's take those one at a time. When you talk about a balanced budget, that's really it's really a one-sided question, right? Because you're not in favor of raising taxes, right? So to get into balance but knock off half of the equation, what you're really talking about is cutting government.
By 43%, because right now we're printing and borrowing money to the tune of 43% of every dollar that we spend. And what's a difficult argument is that when you talk about cutting Medicare by 43%, everyone's aghast at, well, you can't do that. Well, I don't think what people are comprehending is, unless we do this, in my opinion, we're going to find ourselves with nothing. We're going to find ourselves with no Medicare. We're going to find ourselves in a monetary collapse similar to Russia at the end of the 80s, where our money's worth something one day and then worth nothing the next, because we're printing so much of this right out of thin air. It's more money chasing the same goods and services. It has to result in runaway inflation at some point.
Well, at some point. Right now, though, we're in a deflation, right?
Well, and so but that's not an uncommon phenomenon. It's I kind of liken it to a tsunami. A tsunami first is a dip, is a big suck, and then after it sucks, then you get this. And what we've got is a tsunami of cash headed toward us. That the result of which is going to be just incredibly decreased buying power. Okay. And a monetary collapse is not something that the government is going to say, 2 weeks from Thursday, there's going to be a monetary collapse, so go out and spend all the money that you have because it's not going to be worth anything 2 weeks from Thursday. It doesn't work that way. It just happens, and it happens very quickly, and we're not immune to the mathematics of continuing to spend and to borrow and print money.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about some of the other issues. You mentioned social issues, including the legalization of marijuana. You also have been making some headlines by pointing out that Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, apparently introduced legislation in 1996 that would have led to the death penalty for people importing more than 2 ounces of marijuana with intention to distribute.
So I'm one of the 100 million Americans who've smoked marijuana, and you know, but for that activity in my life, otherwise I'm a tax-paying, law-abiding citizen, and I'm not alone in that category. There are 100 million other Americans in that same category. So I just think it's disingenuous when you're talking about the death penalty for marijuana use when he himself admitted use for that marijuana. And under the wrong set of circumstances, with his own law, would he have been subject to the death penalty?
Here's the question I have, Governor. You were a 2-term Republican governor of a border state. From my understanding of history, Republicans have been staunchly against drugs, including marijuana, since Nixon in 1968. I mean, you sort of had to know what you were getting into when you were under that big tent with a lot of other people who have been fighting a war against drugs, right?
Well, and so for me, in 1999, I came out in favor of legalizing marijuana. I took a very highly publicized look at the war on drugs and came to the conclusion that 90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related, and that's not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that ought to be the focus. Let's legalize marijuana, control it, regulate it, and tax it. I don't smoke marijuana today, I don't drink alcohol today, but based on my own experience, in no category is marijuana more dangerous than alcohol, and yet we're arresting 1.8 million people a year in this country. Half law enforcement, half the courts, half the prisons, drug-related. This is an incredible amount of resources that we're using with no beneficial impact whatsoever. None.
Okay, fair enough. I've also got to ask you about Israel. You differ with your fellow Libertarian, Ron Paul, who is still in the Republican hunt for the presidency, on aid to Israel. How and why do you differ?
Well, I'm opposed to foreign aid. I think the fact that we're borrowing and printing money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar and then we're turning around and giving it away to foreign countries makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Even if foreign aid is less than 2% of the budget?
Even if foreign aid is less than 2% of the budget. I mean, this is something that we need to look at. These are the reforms that we're going to have to embark on right now, unless if we're not going to find ourselves without a country. But I do believe in military alliances, and I think that Israel has been an important ally, will remain an important ally, and I use that in the context of being able to reduce military spending by 43%. I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013, and that means a 43% reduction in government spending. I will outline and have been outlining what a 43% reduction in military spending looks like. It's only going back to the year 2003 for one thing, but it gets us out of the conflicts that we're currently involved in. It reduces nuclear warheads from 2,300 to 500. Do we need to blow up the world 10 times or might 6 times do it? Do we need 100,000 troops on the ground in Europe? Might 57,000 troops do it? And I got to tell you, I'd be hard-pressed to be convinced that we need 57,000 troops on the ground in Europe. But it's research and development, it's those in uniform, it's the civilian support staff that goes along with that. But it's only going back to the year 2003. And I want to point out that of the worldwide dollar spent on military defense today, 52 cents of that dollar is being spent by the United States, and we're 5% of the world's population. Operative word being defense. We need to provide ourselves with a strong national defense, but that's the operative word, not offense, not warfare.
Okay, very good.
So we need to slash welfare, we need to slash warfare.
Welfare and warfare. We are going to leave it there for now, but we put up your website, and so people can find out more about you.
Thank you very much.
And we'll check in with you from time to time as things get closer. And I do want to talk with you at some point about whether or not you think you might actually tilt the election toward Obama, in particular in the swing state of New Mexico.
Well, actually, I think it would be the other way around. For all those Democrats that are disenfranchised when it comes to gay rights, when it comes to drug policy, when it comes to warfare, when it comes to a woman's right to choose, I think it might work the other way around.
Okay, we shall see. Thanks a whole lot. I enjoyed talking with you.